Hello. So I want to share with you on how to write text in React or basically on the front end. Um, there's different ways of doing it, but I'm going to try and share the simplest way. And this will be basically be on unit test. There's other kind of testing like end-to-end testing or integration testing that won't be covered in this video. This is just to get you up and running with basic testing on of your components of basically what the user sees. So uh, there's a few things you should consider is what exactly you want to test in your code, and if you're using the React testing library that comes with Create React App, this here, then you would know that it recommends to write tests that for write tests for what the user sees, right? So you're basically writing the tests, you are testing what the user is able to see in the browser. So you're not testing the implementation of how you implemented your button, for example, but it's how it appears in the browser. It's what the user is seeing because that's the end goal of the application. You want the user to be able to use it. So that's what you should be testing against, right? So I have one component here. It's a basic login page. It has an initial state. It has an email. It has a name, then a message that is no. Then here I'm setting that initial state here as an object. Then here I'm updating um, either the email or the name, depending on what was changed in the input field. Then I have a submit function here that basically shows the message in the browser after clicking on the submit button. Then I have the input there for the email. Then I have a type, have the name, have the data test ID. We'll talk about that later. Then have the value on the on change. Then I have this similar thing for the username. Then I have a button that's disabled. Then um, I have a button that's not disabled. This is the one we're using for submitting. Then here is where I'm displaying the message. And this, you can actually omit this and just display that. And you can check this in the browser. Um, so refresh that actually. And you can see that this is what we have here. And submit that, and this is what we get. So you actually don't need that extra check to check whether the message was no or not. You can just uh, display it however it is, then React will figure it out whether it should render it or not. All right, so this is the basic stuff that we have. Then also this was created from the basic Create React app. So you would have a similar setup once you have it. Then here is the test that comes with Create React app. Here there was a different text, but I changed it to disabled button. Our disabled button is this one here. So that's the one added in there. Then our app basically renders the login, which is the one we have right here. Okay, so let's go ahead and start writing our test in here. Okay, so few things we're going to test for. Let's just write them down. So first we'll test if uh, we are able to change the field in here, right? We can also check for the existence of this whole field. Same for this, same for the buttons as well. Then later on we'll actually check if the buttons are disabled or not, because if they're disabled, then that means the user is not able to use that button, right? Okay, so let's write them down. So we have the user email, then have the user name, and have have a support button. Then we have submit button. Then we have the message. Excuse me. Okay, so yeah, I think those are the basic things that we have. One quick thing to note is that I have this jest extension here. It shows me the tests that are running and the ones that are failing. So as soon as I change this, for example, and save it, you see that it will start running. Then it will show me the tests that are failing and the reasons down there. But in case you don't have that, you can also open your terminal, then just run yarn, run. Or if you're using npm, that can also work. Let's say test, then watch. Then this will be automatically running depending on the test that you are changing. So you can see we have one that is passing and one that is failing. And the reason why this is failing is because we don't have anything in yet. So at the moment, we don't have comments. So I'll go ahead and start importing stuff so that you can use them. So these are the stuff we are testing. Right. Then here we'll have let me not even have this basically the stuff, the things that we're going to import. So the first one is we need to import our button. Sorry, our login page. So go ahead and say import login, right? Then go ahead and start writing. So we'll have a test suite, and we use that describe. So you say login component. Yeah, we'll have our test, our first test. So let's say that this um, include should include the user email, right? Okay. So in here, there's a few things we can do. Actually, we can write our test in one block here. Then it doesn't really matter that much. It's good for in case you are working as a team. It's good to have these separate so that you can have those small units by themselves. But in this case, I'm just going to write them all in one block. So let me see. It should render the form is correct. So a few things to do with when writing test. The first one is make sure that you prepare your data. So prepare your data or component, right? So in our case will be prepare the props that would have, right? In case you have props that your component is using, or any external things that you need to inject in your component, then you prepare them first. Then secondly, we render our component, right? If it was just a normal function, then we would call the function that we'll be testing. Then secondly is sorry, third is we are setting so we are set to check if what is happening is actually what we're expecting, right? So I'll go ahead and say let's say call this a container, and then we render it. It's supposed to import for me. It's not doing it's fine. Then I will go ahead and import render from testing library slash React. In case you're using a different framework, then you can just specify there. This basically works for most. It's an implementation that can work for other frameworks as well. Then now we can render then I'll say login. Okay, so now container contains now all different methods from the testing library that you can use to grab the elements. And there are different queries that you can use. I prefer to get the ones inherited from here. You can also do this and a bunch of stuff you can get, like query by text, query by title, query by test ID. All these are basically there for you to use. There's also query or by alt text. Yeah, you can check the documentation to see which one is best for you. For now, I'll just use container so I can get them all. Then I'll be choosing which one I want to use. So firstly, let's start by getting this guy here, and we'll use the user email test ID. So I'll say, um, say, let's test if this is in the document, in the DOM. So I'll start by creating user email. Right, I'll just go it like that. Then I'll say container dot query by test ID. Then I'll use my test ID, this one here. Then now I can do expect user email, right, to be in the document. Okay, so now I'm checking to see if this is actually in the document. Then I'll save that. So my tests are running down here. And you can see that they are passing. This actually shows you, I can check there to see, to show you that this is actually passing. In case we go here, you can find that that also shows green. So now we know that our user email actually displays in the browser, or the user is able to see that, right? One other thing we can do is that we have a non-change and the value here. So you can see that if you can see here, you can say user email is test@gmail.com, right? So a user can type that in there. So let's test for that functionality as well. So we have that here. So here we use what's called fire event, and fire event basically allows you to do certain actions on your component. So that is auto imported. So say if I event.change, then we're changing this user email here. Then we give it the value that we want, and we give that using a target. So say target, then the value. Then you can say email at test.com. Right. Then now we can check if the value of this user email is actually um, email at test.com. So do expect user email dot value. See, expect user email dot value to contain. Okay, that is to complete. Contain email test. This might fail because of the value, but let's see. So that actually passes. So now we know that the user email, the value of our user email has changed as we tested it. So we can try this by changing something here to see if this will actually fail. And you can see that it failed because it says expected substring is this, but this is what it got because this is what we changed here, but we are expecting something different. So that's actually that shows that it's actually working. So we're basically done for the first input here. Secondly, let's go to the username. It's the same thing. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and get this, then change where possible. So now this is a name, right? Then I'll change this to username, right? Because this is the name. Yeah. So that should also pass. Yeah, that is passing. So we're basically doing the same thing for both uh, elements since they do similar things. Now let's go to our button here called disabled button. So let's find the button. So for the button, let's also do what can be if you want to type lots of stuff, you can also do an expect container dot query by test ID support button. So with this, you can actually check if this text is there. Excuse me. So let's say container query by test ID dot text content to contain that will be what support. Let me just copy contain support button. So we're checking if this disabled button actually test ID actually contains the text code disabled button, and that is there. Then next we can check if now the button is actually disabled. So we can do container.create test by ID, then submit by disabled button to be disabled. So the testing library is so cool because it provides all these expect methods that give you things like disabled functionality or contain or in the DOM. That's what makes it super easy to use. So now we know that our button is disabled, right? So we're done for that button. Then let's go for this button. So this button is called submit button. I think we can do the same thing. Right? So this one's called submit button. The text is called submit. Now this should fail because the submit button is not disabled, right? And you can see an underline here in red showing that this is failing. If you hover on it, they show you that received element is not disabled. So you know that the element you are checking is actually not disabled. It also shows down here, and you can also see it in your terminal here that what you're actually testing is not disabled. So to test for that, simply add a node 2. Then you save that. So this will check if it's not disabled. Now, so I expect this not to be disabled. Now our tests are back and running. Now, one more thing is this button here has a handle submit function, and this handle submit function updates our message state to just submitted the form, right? So let me just reload this. When we add our stuff in here and click submit, then we get this just submitted the form, right? So we need to test for this as well. We need to check if this submit the form actually shows up after clicking the submit button. Okay, so let's go back to our test file here. Then, so we need to get the submit button. Oh, we've already gotten that. So now let's do fire event. Remember the same thing that we used for the change event here. We're going to use it for, excuse me, for clicking the button. So say fire event.click. excuse me, then container.query, submit button, right? So 5n.click container.query. So we're now trying to access this button here and click on it so that we can invoke this function. Okay, so now let's see if the function has been clicked, and we will prove that by showing checking if this message is actually available, right? So, oops, go back and check if this guy contains the message. So say expect container. This time it's not submit, it's the message to contain, yeah, this message here. So if this is there, then we know that it has actually been clicked. Now it says contain that. Okay, so it's received an object instead of a value, a text value. So we need to give it text form. You can either use text content like this, or you can use to have text content. So that should also work. That. Okay, so that also works. So this is the same as that also gets the text content of the element that have been found here, right? So what we've tested for is our input fields, both of them. We've tested if our button is disabled and if the text actually is there. We've also tested if we have a submit button and if it's clickable, and if the action for that button actually does something. We can actually prove this by checking for this before we click the button here. Just add some space so that is visible. Okay, and I'll save that. And you can see that this actually fails because this just submitted the form will not be available before we click the submit button. So that's the basics with writing test on the front end. Yeah, let me know in case you have questions, but this should work for you in case you have any similar implementation. One thing I would advise you to do is make sure that you write components that are very isolated from like external APIs and other things. That way it makes it easy for you to write tests without having to mock things. And also those components are always reusable because you can just give them, feed them the data that they need, then they can perform certain actions, and for you to be easy for you to test those actions. All right, that's basically it. Thanks a lot for watching, and let me know in case you have any question.